I'll get alerted. All right. So welcome everybody to SkySlope training. Excited to have you here. We're excited to be showing you this fantastic platform. So I know that Tony did his roadshow and kind of told you what we were doing, or probably wouldn't have gotten here today. But I just want to be clear that SkySlope is replacing Zip TMS as our transaction management platform. And it replaces digital ink, it replaces DocuSign. This is an all-inclusive platform. And so we're going to go through that today. It also changes the way that we process your transactions internally in the company. So we're going to cover that as well. So I have this amazing team here with us today from SkySlope. They came all the way out from Sacramento to join us, and I'm so disappointed in our weather. They're going to be here all week, so I'm still got some hope. But this is Logan, and she's going to be running our training today. And then in the back, we have Taylor and Katie and Jesse. And Katie is actually part of the SkySlope support team. So when you call into chat or email or call into SkySlope, she might be one of the people you grab. So she's here learning today too. And then Taylor and Logan and Jesse have been helping us get all this stuff set up. So I'm going to turn it over to Logan. And for the Zoomers, if you guys want to put your questions in chat, and then I may call on you if I don't quite understand the chat question, and you can unmute and go from there. And we are recording today so that people that can't get to training will have a recording. So there you go.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. So today we are going to be going through the SkySlope training for agents. So I'm going to be walking through the system as an agent, showing you what SkySlope is and what your role with the system will be. As Phil has mentioned, if you guys have any questions, they will pause at different times. So feel free to ask questions then, or if something pops up, feel free to ask it. If you're on the Zoom, feel free to type those into the chat box. I already introduced myself, so I'll skip over that one and talk about the SkySlope support team. They are going to be a huge resource for you all. They are amazing experts within the system, and they're all based out of our Sacramento headquarters. If you call, they will answer on the second ring. If you chat, they'll respond within 10 seconds. If you email, they'll respond within 20 minutes. Those are their guaranteed times. And every single time you reach out, you're reaching out to a real live human being, not going to get any robots or anyone outsourced or overseas. And again, they're experts within the SkySlope system. So I'll talk a little bit more about them when I get into the system. So our agenda today, we're going to be covering a few different things. 1, compiling contracts. 2, getting client signatures. And then 3, submitting those forms to Allen Tate for review. A few other things I'll cover as well, but those are like bulk of what we're going to be covering today. Really the main thing that you'll want to know how to do within the system. So I am going to jump into my SkySlope account. This is my demo account within Allen Tate. So when you log into SkySlope, your account should look very similar to this. You have your company logo in the upper left, your stat bar up top showing you everything that's current within your account, your name in the upper right. To the left of our name, we have this little guy with the headset. This is our support center. So if you're working within the system, anything you need, if you have a question, you're not sure where to start, you can just click on that little support guy and it takes you into the support center. Now here, we're going to have a chat box that pops up in the bottom right-hand side. Give them a chat, get 10-second response time. You can also scroll to the bottom of the page and we have their phone number there as well. So if you'd rather give them a call. Up a little further, we also have tutorials and training. So if you just want to watch a quick little tutorial video or training or read a step-by-step on how to do something, there is a tutorial training for everything you could possibly need to know within the system. So tons of things here. You always know where to start. You always have things to watch, people to chat with, tons of resources. All right. So now I'm going to go through the system today as an agent. I'm going to be acting as an agent, and we're going to go through a scenario. So today I'm working with a client of mine, Matthew. He's ready to list another property with me. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to get my paperwork started. So where I'm going to go is I'm going to click apps in the upper right-hand side, and I'm going to go to forms. So if you have not got into forms yet, it'll take you through a little bit of a setup process when you first go through here. It'll be pretty simple, and it'll take you to a screen that looks like this. When you first get into forms, I highly recommend you click your name in the upper right, and go to user profile and fill out the information there, your license number and brokerage information and things like that, it will populate into the remainder of the forms. And then associations. Go there, make sure you have access to the associations that you need access to, so that when you create your files, you have access to the forms. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started, create my file for my client Matthew. First, who am I representing? So I'm representing the seller today. Client is Matthew McConaughey, so I'm gonna go ahead and enter his information in here. Yep. You can also add any additional contacts, or if it's a company, trust, or other entity, you can switch to that as well. Do you have a property yet? So if the property is on the MLS already, you can go ahead and import it from the MLS. If not, we can go ahead and just type in the address here. I'm just gonna throw one in there. As you start typing, that pulls up from Google, so you can also just select that result. And then how would you like to name your file? So you can do the address, you can do the client, or you can do a combination of the two, which I like to do the address and then the client's initials. And then lastly, would you like to start with one of your templates? So these templates have been created for you and shared with you. So you have access to these when you create your forms files. What these are is just a packet of forms that you should need for this specific property type. In my case, this is a listing resale. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And it's going to bring in those 13 forms that I should need for this specific property. And then I'm going to create. Now this is going to create my forms file, and it's going to bring in those 13 forms that were in that template. If there are ever forms that you do not need for a specific file, you hit these three little dots, you can delete it from the file. You can also add additional forms. So if you have any forms that you want to add to this file, you'll click on Add Forms. And this is where you can see your libraries, all of the different forms, and you can add them here. Here's where you can see you have your Allen Tate library and your North Carolina Realtors. Okay, so back in my forms file, I'm ready to start filling these forms out, send them out for signature. So I'm going to go ahead and select the forms that I'm ready to send out. Exclusive. I'm going to select the lead paint.
You put mineral oil and gas this time.
Yes.
That's always.
And I will select this one. Make sure it loads here first. So I'm going to select those three, and then I'm going to click on fill and send in the bottom right. If I want to select all of the forms, I can. If I just want to select one form, you can do that too. But I'm going to go ahead and just select those three, fill and send. When I click on that, it's going to bring all of these forms here. And now I'm just going to scroll through and I'm going to fill these forms out. So Matthew McConaughey, his information is already here. If I click on that contact, it brings up some information that I can put in here and it'll populate to the rest of the forms as well.
I don't understand. I'm here a little.
I don't know why that just started happening to me. So I'm just going to scroll through and I'm just going to put in some information. So I'm going to throw in the expiration date. I'm not going to fill out the entire form, but I'm going to throw some things in here. Scroll down and put in the list price. 0 this time. Check some boxes. And you'll just scroll through, fill out the form. If I jump to the next form, we can do the same thing here. You'll notice these check boxes are grayed out. That's because those are to be filled out by the seller, but those are going to be mapped for you. And we'll just keep scrolling through. My lead paint, same thing here. You'll also notice on this page, you can import MLS data at this point. So if when you first created the file, it was not on the MLS, maybe it is now, you can import the MLS data at this point to fill in some of the information for you. And then we have download. So if you're going to meet your client in person, maybe get wet signatures, you can still download, print these forms out after filling them out. But in my case, I'm going to go ahead and send these out for signature through the system. So I'm going to click on prepare signature. And this is going to create me an envelope, which is my signing session. So envelope name will always pull the file name over, but I like to edit this to make it more customized to what I'm actually sending out. I'm going to do that. Training agent, that's me. I don't have any action on this document, but if I did need to sign, I could change that. I will receive a copy automatically, so I don't need to select that and leave myself as no action. Then Matthew McConaughey, he needs to sign. We'll hit next. And this will take me into Digisign, which is going to be the signing portion. So here those forms are going to populate and they're going to be set up for us. So everything is already going to be mapped. The signatures, the initials, the checkboxes, properties for the checkboxes are all going to be here. If I scroll through, we can see my initials. All I need to do is scroll through and make sure everything looks good. I'm going to go to this mineral and oil and gas. And you can see those checkboxes are now there. And again, those properties are set up for those. So the client is either going to choose yes, no, or no representation. So
Those are optional. When they pick one, the rest of them are done, and it takes them to the next question. Same thing for a property disclosure.
So you'll just scroll through, make sure everything looks good, but you also have this toolbar up top if you ever did need to add additional initials or signatures, whatever it may be. Over on the left-hand side, recipients, you can also add additional recipients. So if I click this, edit recipient, I can add any additional recipients here. I can also add people as like it receives a copy. So when the document comes back signed, they'll get a copy of it. And there are signer groups. So if I want this to go out to me and then to Matthew to sign, you can set those properties up too. And then once everything looks good, we're going to go ahead and hit send in the bottom right. Before I send it out, I just want to pause and see if there are any questions so far. Yeah.
If you have something where it's, will every document already be set up where check one or the other, like even the lead-based paint, do you plan to test or not plan to test? Okay, so they're all already like that. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm
I
going
was
to
just
show
gonna
you.
ask how you do that manually up there, but if you don't ever need to do it, then.
You won't really
Okay.
need to do it, but if you ever did need to, I'll just throw some checkboxes on here just to show you. I can put a checkbox, and then you can add checkboxes to this group.
Okay.
And then over on the left,
Or the other.
you can put those properties. So select at least one or exactly one. Yeah. I'll
Are
actually
you gonna go over a buyer one as well, or just the seller?
We're only going to go through the seller today. Do you have a question on that?
Yeah, so, on the MOG, for buyer, will all the initials be over there on the left?
You have to drag.
Yep.
I know, we've already heard that people are disappointed. They're not gonna be dragging and dropping it. So we're so sorry.
Thank you.
You start planning what you're gonna do with your free time.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and send this out. Subject line and message, there's a standard one in there, but you can customize that to say whatever you'd like. And send for signature. So when I send that out, it is going to take me back to my forms file, but now I'm going to be in an envelopes tab. So this is where I can see all of my signing sessions. Forms where I was working before is right here. So envelopes, we can see that signing session that I just sent out. We can see the date it was sent, status, and then over on the right, you can also view the history, download, cancel, resend, whatever you may need. So now I'm going to act as Matthew. I'm actually going to sign the form so you guys can see that side of things. So I'm going to go into my email. I have an email here from my agent. I have documents to sign. They'd see the message if you left them one, and get started. So this is going to take me into the signing session. I'm going to agree to the e-signature terms. And then it's going to take me to my form. Now here in the bottom left, your client or whoever's sending these forms to will have the option to download these forms prior to signing. So some people like to put their wet signatures on there. Some people like to mark things up before they sign. They have the ability to do that. And then in the bottom right, it's going to show you how many fields total I have to sign and then my progress as I go. So I would just scroll through, make sure everything looks good, hit start when I'm ready. And it's going to take me to my first initial field. I'm going to go ahead and select that. First one I select will have me choose a signature font, or I can draw my signature and initials. But I'm not good at doing that on the computer, so I am going to select the font. And now it's just going to take me through the document. all of my initials, goes through pretty quick. There's also some optional fields. It'll have me acknowledge that the field is there, but I can hit next and go past it.
And you can change optional fields to required.
Yeah, before you
So
send
like
it
if
out.
you were firm exclusive.
Yeah, so right there,
You could change it.
Mhm.
And say, I want you to sign this one, this line.
or or when we're filling it out for, or getting it ready for them, we can X out that middle,
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
You just
out.
put two
like we
yeah.
do now. Okay.
required ones, okay.
yeah. So they're set up with all three, but you can remove some or change the required fields.
We customize these in our own account so that middle one always is crossed out.
They're mapped for the whole company, so they're always set up that way, yeah. Okay, so now I'm at these check boxes. We can see the properties are set up. So if I select one, it won't let me select the other two. I'm gonna go to the next one. Select these boxes. And keep going. So here again, select box, can't select the other one. And same thing. Still going, almost done, last field. So my signatures, initials, check boxes, all filled out. I can scroll through again if I want to double check. And then finish signing. So here, when I hit finish signing, I can download these forms from here. I'll also receive an email. As the agent, you will receive an email also. And back in forms, the status will now show completed. So I have filled my forms out, I've got them executed. My next step is to submit these for review. I'm going to jump into that next step now, but before I jump out of forms at Digisign, are there any other questions here?
So we have one question in chat, which I answered, but I want to talk through it. So Colleen was asking, so I have a buyer and we make more than one offer before we go into contract. I know it doesn't happen very often, right? So what's the best way to save the file in the buyer name or the address in the system? And so what we're suggesting is that you keep that file as the buyer, right? Because the forms kind of live over here, and I know y'all can't see my hands, but the forms live in one place and the transaction lives in another. So they're connected but independent. So the forms would sort of stay over here as your buyers, right? And then you could, I actually have written instructions for y'all, like what you can do to get rid of the offer that didn't get accepted and bring another one into that folder. So I would just keep it, we're recommending that you just keep it in the buyer's name. And then when you connect it to the transaction, you can do that later and you can have the property address then, but I would just keep it as the buyer until you're under contract and you have a property.
So you'd have to import a new offer to purchase. You couldn't just delete out the address and change it,
You can't do that.
or you could do
Yeah.
that.
You can do that.
Okay.
You'd have like if you sent it out for like signature, you'd have that one. And then if you wanted to keep going back and changing the information.
Yeah.
You just resend it in a new envelope or
Yeah.
something.
Or you could, so the templates layer, so you can like, you'll see, we did the list side, but on the buy side, the buyer agency templates are separate. There's a template for buyer agency documents. And then there's an offer to purchase template because you're going to do the buyer agency documents and then sometime later you're going to start writing offers, right? So you could just go layer another template of forms, right? Take the old one, the old forms out and layer a new
This-
template.
Make this
Yeah.
layer one address, make the next one another
I
address.
understand.
So I think y'all will get in and there's more than one answer,
Sure.
so it kind of be what suits you better.
You can show the duplicate feature also. Yeah, for just the file, because you can duplicate a file. So if you have just agency documents for a buyer, you don't want to delete anything, you just want to start fresh, you can just duplicate that. So all your signed documents are still there and add a new address.
That's just on that home page of the forms.
So I think what she's getting ready to tell us is that every single time we fill out forms on here and have them signed and our client finishes signing them, they're going to you guys. Okay, so
Well,
we're not,
not exactly. They're coming into your transaction. You're gonna see that side of it. And you're gonna put them on our checklist.
Okay.
And then we're gonna get them. You're not gonna email them to us. You're not gonna download them. That's the next step we're gonna show you.
because like what Christine was saying, like if we fill out these forms, they sit, right now they sit in zip forms until we know we have an accepted contract. And then we send it all.
Right, that's the same thing, that's the same thing, they're sitting in forms.
Oh, okay.
Right, they're sitting,
Okay.
right, so forms and the transaction side of SkySlope are separate. They're independent, but they're connected. Right, so if you want to connect it, you can, when you have a transaction, you will, but they'll sit in forms until you're
Until
ready.
we tell it to go.
Until you
And then
tell
it'll
it
go
to
down.
go.
Okay.
And then when you take one more action, it's validated.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll show you that right now. So got the forms executed. So again, ready to submit these to Alan Tate. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to SkySlope, which is the transaction management piece. Takes us back to that main dashboard, and we have a couple options here: create listing or create transaction. If I'm representing the buyer, I'm gonna create a transaction. If I'm representing the seller, I'm gonna create a listing. So I'm representing the seller in my case, so I'm gonna start with the listing. Brings us to Sky, who helps us get the file created. And then we have our forms files. So this is where you're going to connect this listing to that forms file we were just working on. So I'm going to go ahead and select that forms file. Hit next question. And then what type of listing is this? So this is important. This is going to determine which documents are required for this file. So you want to make sure you choose the correct options here. So resale listing. Property list price pulled over for us. And then we have listing and sales commission. And then we can go ahead and add any co-agents here as well. So if you're working with a team member, an assistant, you can go ahead and add them as a co-agent. When they log into SkySlope, they'll have access to this listing and you guys can work on it together.
And co-listings in SkySlope don't have anything to do with MLS. This is just somebody that needs to kind of be in your file with you. Validated.
List price, gonna throw that in there. Expiration date pulled over from the forms file.
If you're using transaction coordinator, would you add them?
Yep. And they would need to be in our system in order to access that.
Next, what year is the property built? And then lastly, who's selling the property? So Matthew McConaughey pulled over, just gonna throw his phone number in here. And then lastly, does everything look right? So just make sure everything was entered correctly or pulled over from the forms file correctly, and then create my listing. When you create the listing, it's gonna take you directly to the checklist. I'm gonna come right back to this, and we're gonna go to the listing tab so I can show you here. The listing has all of that information that we just entered with Sky, and that came over from the forms file, pulled into this tab. If you want to add any additional information, if you need to make any changes, this is where you will come.
The listing tab replaces the listing report. Okay, so there's no more listing report, there's no more sales report, there's no more closing report. So you do just have to fill out the ones that have the red asterisk by them. Not much.
Contacts will have contacts entered, and then we have the checklist. So the checklist is where we're actually going to be submitting documents to our processors. So you're going to have items in red, those are required, and then items that are, if applicable, in that light blue color. So this is where you're actually turning things in. So since this is connected to my forms file, it makes things pretty easy. For instance, I sent out this exclusive right to sell. All I have to do is hit attach. And then those documents that I sent out through forms that have come back executed are already here. And I just hit assign. That is going to change that item from red to in review, which means I have submitted it for review. And then I'll continue just adding the others. So I have submitted this one. And then I had the lead paint. Go ahead and add that. So what this is doing is it's notifying the processors that you've submitted these documents for review. So you don't have to text, call, email, hit submit anywhere. They're automatically notified and you're just turning in these documents as you go. You don't have to submit everything at once. You're just submitting things as they come back signed. There are a few other ways to get documents to this checklist as well. In a perfect world, everything will go through forms and they'll be in there, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes we get wet signatures or sometimes the other agent sends us documents. So to get those here, we have a couple of different options. One is, one is drag and drop. So if I have the document on my computer, I can actually just take it from my downloads and drag it right where it needs to go. So you can drag and drop. Along the same lines as that, you can just hit attach and then upload the form from your computer. And we also have this email address. So let's say I met my client in person, I have a big stack of paperwork sitting in front of me, and I need to somehow get that paperwork into this file. This email address, every single listing, every single transaction is given a unique email address, street name, street number at skyslope.com, and you can actually scan those documents directly into this file with that email. Same thing with emailing. So Matthew actually sent me some documents. If I copy this email address and I go into my email, I have an email here from Matthew and I have his listing packet.
It's always the root spot.
So all I would need to do is hit forward, paste that email address.
I think Tony's response was the best when he first saw this. He said, all right, all right, all right.
Sends that in, takes the attachment, and it also tracks the email communication. So any thread that goes through, I'll show you where we can see that later. If I go back here, it's not going to assign automatically to the checklist. This is where you're submitting. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if it would throw them in.
Yeah. So this, yeah. This is where you're like actually submitting to the brokerage, so it's never going to just turn it in, but instead it goes to the documents tab. So what the documents tab is really just like a filing cabinet for this file. So staging receipts, property photos, anything pertaining to the file you can put in the documents tab just to store here. You'll also see the forms that came over from the forms file, and then that document that I just forwarded in. Now, to get this to the checklist, let's say it's just the listing agreement. I can check the box to the left, hit assign, and assign where it needs to go. However, Matthew sent me an entire packet. So it has a ton of forms in this one PDF. So I can't just throw the whole packet on the checklist. I would have to split this form up. What's great about SkySlope is I can split it straight from here. And at the same time, I can attach it to the checklist. So I can knock two things out at once. I'll hit split. It'll open up my split window. Document's going to show over on the right-hand side. And then the left-hand side, I'm going to put the form name and the page ranges of that form. So I have my first page that starts my listing agreement. It's over on the left. I'm going to go ahead and start typing that in. And as I type, I can see these results from the checklist. I'm going to select that. Scroll through, see how many pages the listing agreement is. Goes from page 1 to page 8. Page 9 will start my next form. Good tip here is if you hit the space bar on your keyboard, pulls up the whole checklist for you to choose from. So we're going to say that is the property disclosure. That goes for a few pages, and then our next form, we will put that on this one. There you go. So you're just going through that form, putting the page ranges, putting where it should go on the checklist. Once that's done, split and assign. Lets you know, hey, good job, split those 3 documents, and they were attached to the checklist. And now those documents are in review as well. So again, you don't have to text, call, email, let anybody know. They're going to be automatically notified that they have documents to review. And all of this you have full visibility to. So as you log into SkySlope, come into the checklist, you can see what things were marked completed or what's still missing. You may also receive an email that looks like this, address in the subject line. They can leave you a message, and then the status of your checklist here. You can see what's completed, what's required, what's marked incomplete with the reason why it was marked incomplete, and then what's still in review. So these are the different statuses that we may see. Required and incomplete obviously means there's some action on your part, but completed means they're good to go. And in review means it's still pending review from the processors. So again, you may receive this snapshot email, or you can always log into SkySlope, view the checklist, and you'll see the status changes here too. So that is the bulk of it. We have created our forms file. We've got those executed. We've submitted them for review. There's a few other things I want to show you, but since we've gone through really the main part of it, I'm going to pause again for any questions. Okay, and I'll keep going. So a few more things here on the listing. One is withdraw listing. So if the listing expires or whatever the case may be, you can withdraw it. When you withdraw, it'll go to an admin for approval, and then I'll show you where it goes in a little bit. And then we have accepted contract. So accepted contract is what we're going to do if this goes under contract. So right now, this is just a listing. We have no buyer information, no sale documents. It's just the listing side. But we have a buyer come along, they put an offer on the property and we accept it. We now want to turn this listing into a transaction, which is what the sale side is. So I'll hit accepted contract and it'll take this entire file, the listing, the checklist, the documents, everything, and turn it into a transaction. I'm going to show you that side. I'm going to jump to my home page. I just created a listing. Manage listings is where all of my listings will be stored. You can see the list of your listings there. Creating a transaction if I'm representing the buyer. And then manage transactions will house all of my deals. So whether I'm representing the buyer or if my listing goes under contract, it'll jump into manage transactions. I'm going to go here. I'm going to open up one of our pending transactions. Takes me first to the transaction tab, which has all of our transaction information listed. So closing date, sale price, things like that will be listed here. Contacts will have buyer, title escrow, seller, that kind of information listed. You're going to come back to the commission tab. Checklist is now going to have sale documents that you're submitting, but the process is the exact same. It's going to be attached to your forms file. You can drag and drop. You can email, you can scan. Process is the same as I just showed you on the listing side. Then we have a log. The log is a digital footprint of everything happening on the file. So from the moment you create it on, everything is date and time stamped, showing you who's doing what they're doing. So if you're working with an assistant or transaction coordinator, another agent, you can see when they're uploading documents. You can also see when the processors are reviewing things in here as well. Also, any emails that come through, the entire thread will be tracked here also. So any emails that are coming through, your communication is saved in the log. And then we have transaction actions. One is download summary. So if you want to download a summary, it'll download a 1 to 2 page PDF of all of your property details, contacts, commission information, all on like a nice little cover sheet. And then cancel transaction. So if the deal falls through, buyer backs out, you can cancel the transaction. If a listing is attached, it'll ask you if you want to reactivate the listing side. And then we're going to go to the commission. Phyllis is going to take it away.
All right, so so for the Zoomers, I posted these links in chat. I'm gonna let you guys. So as I said, so there's no more listing report, no more sales report, no more closing report, and so these tabs are what replaces that. So the commission tab, think about that as your closing report. So we're just going to walk through how to fill this out. We're going to walk through this. Okay, so the first section is your commission info. A lot of this populated over from your contracts. You will see the red is required information. So you are talking to the processors and the closers on this page. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And this was a sales side, so it's requiring us to put in the commission. The box that says office gross commission on sale is what we're expecting that we're going to get on the transaction. So as I told y'all, this was a nice commission check. The other deductions we want you to use if the check that you're bringing to us is different than what we expected. So let's say there's a $250 concession at the closing table to get it to close. Put the $250 in there. I'm going to tell you where to explain what it was further down. If the relocation management company was involved and we paid them at the closing table, you would put that amount there, explain why the amount's different, right? So just those kind of things. Why is what we expected different than our closing check? It goes there. You scroll down to the deposit section, pretty straightforward. Are we holding earnest money or not, and how much? Right, easy yes or no question. All right, referral details. This is the part where you are paying somebody else on the transaction, which could be client relations referral, it could be a relocation referral, could be a Tate-to-Tate referral. So this is a required, this one field is required. So there's a drop down under referral type, and you see one of your choices is no referral. Okay, so we really want everybody to go through the process of thinking, do I owe anybody money? So vast majority of times you're just going to put no referral and move on. But if there is a referral, most likely it's an internal referral. And so on the back of the first page I handed to you, or on page 2 for the Zoomers, here's how you're going to fill this out. If it's a client relations referral, you're going to put internal, the referring agent is client relations, the broker's name is Alan Tate, and then you're going to put the percentage in, right? So you can choose either one of these boxes. You'll put the percentage in, right? Which you know is either 15 or 30%. If you have the email, which you should have, that client relations sent you when you accepted it, you could email that. You could forward that email with the email address on this transaction file, forward that email right into here, and then we would have it in the documents, and that would make sure we don't make any mistakes on processing. So you could also upload something if you needed to. So that's client relations. Tate-to-Tate works the same way. Internal referral, the referring agent's name, whoever that is, Phyllis Brookshire, Alan Tate, and put the 25%. If it's Alan Tate relocation, any kind of relocation referral, internal, Alan Tate relocation, Alan Tate, the whatever, 35, 42, 22, 36, whatever the weird number is for that, put it there. Don't worry about the $250 transaction fee or any of that kind of stuff. Don't worry if it's a minus 10% or not. Don't worry about any of that. This is just kind of put something there, okay? And really important, and we actually have we have a checklist item for referral form. Again, you have an email from Alan Tate Relocation, forward it into your transaction file and put it in the checklist. Then we hopefully won't make any mistakes, okay? So that's how you do the internal. If there's an external, maybe there's a commercial broker that we're paying or something, or you could put their information in here. We're gonna have to have a W-9 in order to pay them, so you can just upload it there, okay? But that would only be for external. We don't need it for anything else. That makes sense to everybody? Pretty straightforward? Okay, so we're now going to move to what we're now referring to as the magic box, the additional commission information. This is just a big open text box, and you can type anything into that you want to. So currently our closing report has nowhere for you to put any kind of notes to the processors to explain anything. This is, you can just type anything you want. So if there's a deduction, explain it here. If you want to pay, we're going to talk about how to split the money down here, but I'm going to pay Phyllis $250 on this. You can write that in there. You could say it was a relocation referral. You put anything you want to in there. But just think, I'm talking to the processors and the closers. What do I need to tell them?
Was that where you would put the minus $200 or the minus 10%?
You don't need to. You've given us the form.
Okay.
We're going to do our research. If we know it's a referral, we can do all the research. The biggest challenge we have is we don't know it's a referral.
Okay.
And then we process it wrong, and then we have to go look it up. So you can put it in there. You're welcome to put it in there. But if you've given us the form, we're good to go, okay? If it's an investment property purchase or sale, and we're gonna be paying you 90%, you could write that in there, investment property sale. I did miss, can you scroll back up for me? If it's a personal sale, please mark yes or no at the top, and then we'll know how to pay it 100%. Okay, so write anything you want to in there. If it was my example of the $250 at the closing, and you said, I talked to my broker in charge, Matt Dempson, and he said the company would participate, just write that in there. Okay. That's all done. And then down here, so the last section is about how to split the money that we have, not your commission split with the company. Okay. So this is like, all right, we got a check. It's apparently $2.2 million. But, it's $10,000 and how are we going to split it? The vast majority of the time, you guys are individual agents, you're just gonna get 100% of the check is going to the agent, right? But if you have to pay somebody else, maybe you're gonna pay, it's not a take referral, but Christine's gonna pay Kim because you helped her on the deal, then you would put that down here. If you have a co-agent on the transaction, it's gonna show up right here under training. So if you're working with an assistant or you have a team leader or any of that kind of stuff, it's going to show up and you can show us how to split the money. You can also use the commission breakdown section and it should tell us anything down there, right? So this is all that bottom right part of the closing report. How does the money get split up? That's where you put it. Not what your rate is with the company, just how does it get split up? And that's all there is to it. So if you fill that part out and you load your CD, your signed CD, and give us a check, we have all we need to process the closing, as long as you've done the other required docs. Okay, so let me see if I have any questions here. Not appear so. Yes.
So you said in the commission split area, if there's no special details that we need to put, we don't put ourselves in 100% or.
You can, but we're gonna know. If you're not putting anything else, we're gonna know what to do. Yeah. It's really about if there's something you've got to split the money up, then let us know. That's the place to let us know. I mean,
Right.
yeah. All right. No questions about that? Okay.
You want to talk about your submit?
Oh, gosh. How did I forget that? I know. So I put a note on the bottom of this page because I could not remember when I was learning SkySlope to hit the submit button. So the submit button's at the top. So don't forget to hit submit after you do this. So just think about, I'm filling out a piece of paper and I've got to turn it in and hit submit. That's the way I told myself. I got to tell somebody. So I hit submit. It's just at the top. You've worked your way to the bottom and you wish the button was at the bottom. So they've heard this in every training session. It's getting really old, but eventually that button will be in.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Great. Last few spots I want to show you. On the home page, canceled contracts. This is where any of your withdrawn listings, canceled transactions will be stored. So you still have full access to those. If you need to grab documents or information, they're not going to be fully deleted. And then there's access archives, which is where all of your closed files are going to be stored. So 100% complete finished files will be in your access archives. Just kind of two different storage areas. You click your name in the upper right and go to My Account. There's also a Notifications tab where you can set notifications. So you want to be notified if a listing passes the expiration date or 5 days before your transaction closing date. There's notifications like that that you can enable. And in personal information, there's an alternate email ID. So if you want to put like an assistant, or maybe you want these notifications to go to your personal email, you can put your an email there to also receive notifications. There is also a little magnifying glass up top. This is our global search. So if you know exactly which file you want to open up, you can just search it here, pull it up instead of having to go through manage listings and transactions and all of that. And then to end where I started, which is on support. Remember that even if you don't remember anything we talked about today, just remember where to find support because they can let you know where to start. They can help you with anything that you need, setting up your forms account, creating a listing, whatever it may be. We like to say if something takes you more than 4 or 5 minutes, reach out to them. Nothing should take you that long. So just reach out to them, look at the tutorials. There's tons of resources for you. So big thing there just to remember where to find them. And
Verbal archived, offers not accepted. If you're a listing agent, you received an offer.
Right, so we're gonna keep the archive file the way we have now, because you don't want to gum your stuff up with a bunch of files around that. The only way you get stuff to us is through the transaction part. So you can just email them to, you know, Inspiro.archive or whatever that address is. Is that what it is? Inspiro.archive. Okay. All right, so a couple other things are, let me get my little checklist here, so don't forget. So we have, since January 1, we have been loading your contracts, your transactions into SkySlope. So if you had any, you see some stuff in your, when you logged in. So if you put something under contract or a new listing in November or December, they're not there. And maybe they haven't closed. You are more than welcome. And actually, I recommend you load them into SkySlope because that'll give you the feel about how to use the checklist, and then all your stuff will be there. Processors will be fine. They're still going to go through their process. They've already reviewed it, so they're going to kind of go approved, approved, approved. You don't have to do that, but you can. If you don't do that, when they close, you'll need to email the branch transaction file. So just think about two separate words, zip forms. They're not in SkySlope, they're in zip forms that I have to email branch transaction. If they're in SkySlope, I'll just add my documents and go there, okay? If you want to play around, please put the word test or draft or play or something in the address of the property so our processors don't process it. So we're live. We are live in SkySlope. And if you get notifications right now, they are coming from SkySlope. You're going to see the checklist and the colors, right? So our processors, so of course it's our like 5th training class, and my processors going, please tell them to use the word test. Please tell them to use the word test. So just put it anywhere in the street address and they'll know not to do anything with it. And we can eventually clean those out and archive them so they don't have to come here and work up. All right, so the other thing is that whole step about adding your NERDS ID and your MLS ID, you cannot see forms until you do that. So question we get asked, like, I don't see any forms, because you haven't loaded that. It needs to know you're a realtor before you can access the realtor forms. This is a totally mobile responsive site. So you can do all of this on your phone. Some stuff like this is hard to do on your phone, but you can do it. And so it's a mobile responsive site. So that means you need to save the URL of the site on your home screen. It's not downloading an app, right? Mobile responsive. So I would make an action step, to go to skyslope.com, save it, put in your allocated email address and your password that you set up for SkySlope, and then remember to tell your password keeper on your phone to keep that, and then you can stay logged in when you click, okay? Turn off, if you're using Chrome, make sure and turn off your Chrome pop-up blocker because there's quite a few pop-ups in here. If you're using another browser, can't help you with that, but I use Chrome, so I'm telling you about that one. We talked about notifications, we talked about assistance. So if you're a team leader, you may see your name as, Kim Hellner, team leader. And you're like, well, my name's not Tim. That's not my name. It's an internal thing for us so that we know you're on a team. It doesn't print anywhere. It doesn't go on any forms. Don't worry about that. But that's why we're doing that. So on the checklist on managed transactions, a couple of things. First of all, we created a number of different checklists for you, just like we had 5 different checklists for listings. We have a bunch of different checklists for under contract. So when you're picking, take a look at them. So they're very straightforward, but like, for example, we have resale, FSBO, buyer represented, right? Because that way we know that it's a FSBO on the list side. And so we're going to have different, we've customized the checklist for you, right? And then it also helps us know what kind of transaction you're in. And there's also one that's seller represented, the buyer's unrepresented. So we tried to think of all the different combinations of stuff. So it's all in there for you. On the checklist itself, we've created a couple of placeholders for you. So one of them is additional addenda. So instead of putting a whole bunch of lines on there for stuff that y'all use once in a blue moon, we just put a placeholder. If you have any part of the contract that's an additional addenda that's not in another, doesn't have another checklist item, you can put them there. And you can put multiple documents in a checklist item. So if you had 5 additional addenda that weren't on the checklist, you could just load all 5 of them there. We will check the addenda from a compliance standpoint. If you have other things you want to put in, photos, whatever, I don't know, use miscellaneous documents. You're welcome to use that. That's your folder for that transaction. We're not going to check for anything in there. We're not going to review things. So Addenda is one place and that's the other. I wanted to tell you about that. And if you're on both sides of the transaction personally, you're representing the buyer and the seller, you're going to have two different transactions in Zip4 and SkySlope, just like you do in Profit Power. So you're going to have a listing, and then you're going to accept the contract and drag and drop the documents over, and then you will have gone into forms, most likely created all the buyer forms, and you'll come over and start a transaction on the buy side, which is why all those checklists say buyer represented or seller represented. So you'll have two different placeholders there. Let's see. Oh, if you have a backup contract, so you are in the backup position, you can set all your transaction up, just put backup in the address somewhere, and we won't process it. And then if it becomes in the first position, just take the word backup out, and then we'll know to process it. That way you don't have to load documents a second time and you've got them stored somewhere. Okay. If you want to update any of your closing dates or any of that kind of stuff, just do it. We have notifications on our end if y'all update any dates so that we can update our system. And then the last thing is that your branch staff can help with, they can see your checklist, they can help with loading documents. So for example, you have your closing check, your hard check, and you bring it in with your signed CD. You can hand your CD to them and they can scan it and load it into your checklist for you. Or you can do it yourself, obviously. But just know that they can do that. The last thing is that if you have files in Zip forms right now and you want to save them, archive files you want to save, you have until October. So we'll keep the account live until October. And you can do one of two things. You could either, you could download them and put them in Google Drive or Dropbox or wherever you want to do them, or you could send them into your working documents folder, which is right here. So this is sort of like a Dropbox folder for SkySlope. It's not transaction, they're individually named, but it's not places where we go and look for documents. We only go to the checklist.
It's our storage.
It's your storage. So you could store them there if you wanted all your transactional stuff in one place. And there's actually an email address if the files aren't too big. There's an email address for your whole file. So each of your transactions has an email address, and then your file has an email address. And it's that one we went under our profile, and it's that name at the top. So like training agent 74, it's under my account at the top. So you could email them in. We have some size limitations, but whatever you prefer. Drag and drop them, email them in, or keep them in Google Drive or wherever you want to keep them. Okay. So that was everything on the checklist. Oh, sorry, that's not everything. So we have, you will not see the warranty, the 210 warranty forms in the forms library. They are getting ready to update their form in 2 weeks, and I didn't want to load it and have them map it and then have to load it again. So you can always upload a form, right? We saw that on the forms portal. If you need it, just upload it, but no, that's why it's not there. Let's see. When is the transaction email process going away? So the good lead into my final comment, which is we put the Triangle and Greensboro and Asheboro on this first. Y'all are leading the charge. And so we hope that everybody adopts the system quickly and that they love it. All the feedback's been great because we're running 2 systems of the processing end. And so we're going to be measured on how we can roll in your colleagues in other branches on how quickly everybody adopts. Because if we have to keep managing 2 systems, it's going to get slower. So we hope that everybody adopts. Technically, it's not going away for a little while. We're going to I'm going to come back to you and say, okay, transaction email is going away for the Triangle agents on X. I don't know when X is yet. We wanted to walk before we run. So it will go away. It will not, it'll be before October. But that's, I don't exactly have a specific answer for that. So, that's all my questions. Oh, Kathy Shoemaker confirmed it's branchname.archive@allocate.com. Any other questions?
So if I have transactions that I've already started building in zip forms, what is the easiest way for me to move each one of them over just to enter them in without having to manually enter them in? I mean, am I emailing each one of them?
You can, yeah, I would create the file and then you can email them straight from zip form into
Into
the
the
file.
file.
In each individual file that I have on zip forms, I have to pull over and create my new file.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you show again how you uploaded from your heart? If you had something saved, like you said, how did you do that again?
So I just have my downloads folder, it can be from your desktop, wherever. You just literally grab it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If a file did come back as incomplete, when you're making like missing initial on page 2, once you get that initial corrected, are you just saving it and it automatically updates to them, or do you have to reattach it again with a new?
So the easiest way to do that, so for instance, let's say the listing agreement was missing an initial. You come to the Documents tab, you can select the document, send it to Digisign, and you can get that missing initial. So Digisign is just the signing portion. You can get that missing initial, you can put like strike throughs, whatever you may need. When it comes back signed, it comes back to the Documents tab. So then you just have to assign it back to the checklist.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Questions?
Other questions? Yeah. So that's the best way, right? I think it's very intuitive. You know, you'll figure it out. Just remember, if you're submitting transactions, you put test in. Yeah, so if you need any support for SkySlope, go to the SkySlope support. If you have internal questions about things, you can just email me, or you can put it on the help desk at the transaction questions or transaction issues, whichever that help desk thing is. You can put them there, and that will come to me.
So, do you prefer that we wait until say our buyer is under contract and we have the most of our forms to send before we submit them? Because I like to start as soon as I meet them, start filling out stuff and kind of hold on to it.
As
You want
long
us to go ahead and
as, so
start sending
we don't need anything until you have a contract, right? Because we don't do anything with buyer agency documents. But as soon as you have a contract, you can submit one document at a time. It doesn't matter to us. The way we currently process is we take a file, we go into Zip, we create a new file, we split all the documents, we put them in the placeholders, right? On this, anytime something gets added to the checklist, it just comes into the processor's queue, and then they're reviewing document by document by document. So it doesn't matter a bit. And so I know a lot of agents you do things staged. You don't do things all at once. So it's just once you've under contract with the buyer or you have a listing agreement with the seller, we don't need buyer agency. I wouldn't start it then, because you're going to have to attach your forms and stuff anyway. Okay, sorry.
Or your forms file.
But I can build it.
So think about, I'm going to build it in forms. I'm going to start there.
But then I don't.
And then when it gets to a contract, then I'm going to attach it into the transaction. Yeah, so transaction questions, I couldn't remember what the help desk thing is. It's transaction questions on the help desk. So the other question is, if I've started a transaction in Zip Forms, can we stay with Zip Forms until it closes in a few weeks? Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't expect that you move everything over. We're not asking you to move everything over. We just think some people are going to want to move stuff over. So you have your options on what you want to do. All right. Other questions? Good. Awesome. All right, any other questions from Zoomers? If not, we are gonna, Shane likes it. Thank you, Shane. Appreciate that. All right, if I don't see any more, all right, I'm gonna stop the recording. Thanks, everybody, for your time today.
Thanks, everyone.